Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, Lucy. The one thing I need to let you know, homework has to be in before Monday's class at 3 if you want to be in for this time's drawing. So if you can get it in by Sunday night, that way I can get it, I can check it over and get it sent to the homework person. Having a senior moment, can't remember her name, but that way I can get it in and we can get you into the drawing. So be sure to send your homework in before Sunday night, or before Sunday night is over. Hello, Maria. So today we're going to talk about the principles of movement. And the artist uses movement to help hold his or her work together by bringing into focus the subordinating parts of the piece. The artist controls the viewer's eye around the total picture frame, which helps to hold the viewer's attention. And that's what we want. We want the viewer to look at our piece the longest they can do. There are many ways to show movement in a piece. One is through sequencing. Imagine, for example, the comics that you looked at this morning. There's a progression of movement, both in time and image from square to square. In tatting, this technique could be used to do a bookmark, which is what I've done here. Let me get switched, where a repeating motif can be shifted into position as one motif is joined to another. And I did this pattern in my last tatting group. And so, as you can see, there it is. I went with a burning candle. And so we start with a lit candle in the first square, and then it proceeds to the next square, and the candle's a little bit shorter, the flame's a little bit smaller, and I've added little bitty joining picots kind of to look like dripping wax. And then there's a little pool of wax which comes over and joins into the frame. And also the outside is getting a little darker. And then by the last one, we're darker still. There's not much left of the candle, and there's just ever so little bit of a glimmer. So that was a fun piece to do. If you look at it, though, there's no support for the candles, so you almost have to put it in a bookmark sleeve, which is what I've done, or you can applique it down to tulle, which is not an unusual technique for tatting. A lot of the older projects, they would applique their tatting to tulle and make a bigger piece. Another way to suggest movement is by morphing one design into another. So we're used to making pretty little pieces, and what we can do is start with a pretty piece and then change it into one of distortion or destruction to make an unexpected statement. The artist can use repetition to show active motion. Kind of think of a wiggly dog. You could tat a dog shape with 3 or 4 tails that kind of are going round in circles, so it looks like he's just wagging his tail like crazy. You look at something like that and you can't help but see motion. Unlike music or acting, where the viewer is captivated for a long time, the visual arts have a short time to capture the viewer's interest. The artist needs to hold the viewer's eye by forcing the viewer to look around their piece. This also is movement. Some artists will rely on a large size, so it takes a long time for the viewer to look around the piece. Some artists like to work in miniature. This too can grab the viewer's attention as they examine how such a small piece can be done. So if you have the opportunity to see a show and tell table at one of the tatting events, either here in Indiana in July at the Tatting Corner Tat Days or at Palmetto's Tat Days towards the end of August, you will see at the show and tell tables a wide variety of tatted pieces. There are many tatters making a variety of large-sized doilies. However, some tatters love to work in size 80 and even smaller threads. And so they would need to present their designs in a way that will make it stand out from the surrounding designs. Maybe put it in a frame or tat it up in a bright color. Because of the way we read, most pieces will be observed from the upper left corner to the lower right corner. You'll look here first because we read left to right. So you'll look here first and you'll look down here last. So if I'm working something rectangular, I put my first work down here at the lower right corner. And then by the time I get up here into the upper left corner, I'm an expert. My rings are closing much smoother. My tension is a lot more consistent. And so that's just a little cheat you can use by putting your first work in the lower right corner and your last work in the upper left. People will look at the upper left first and think, oh, what a wonderful tatter this person is. And they kind of slough down as they move down to the lower right corner. They don't look at the lower right corner quite so intently. So for our homework this week, we're going to work some more on rectangles. And so I asked, let me switch over here. And we're going to look again at our golden rectangle. And then what we want to do is put a piece of tracing paper on top. We're going to trace around the rectangle shape. Whoop. I don't think I have that here. There. Trace around the rectangle shape and also trace the square. So if we draw a diagonal line from the lower left corner to the upper right corner of the large rectangle, and from the upper left corner to the lower right corner of the next smaller golden rectangle, where those two lines intersect is the actual focal point of the large rectangle. And as you can see through the tracing paper, it's almost there right in the center of that golden spiral that we drew last week. You could put focal points. Ideally, the focal point would go here, but you can put subordinating pieces anywhere along these lines to kind of lead your eye up here to where these two lines intersect. You can add more focal lines by drawing diagonal lines across the square. Across the square, across the large rectangle, and across the small rectangle. So for a golden rectangle, your main focus area is going to be over in here, where you won't have quite so much detail in these two corners. Does that make sense to everybody? So these are called focus lines. Great place to put subordinating lines, and then put your focus point up here where it belongs on the golden rectangle. Another technique is called the rule of thirds. And this works for any rectangle. So I asked you to draw a 4-inch by 6-inch rectangle and just divide it in half. And you can find that halfway point by drawing diagonals across the whole rectangle, and then from where they intersect here at the center on down to the side. That's dividing your piece exactly in half. So we have these two dividing lines, and then what we can do is draw diagonals through the two equal rectangles that we made when we drew the center line. And where they intersect would be a great place for focal points. And you could put them in, don't put 5 focal points, just put 1, but you can put it here, or here, or here, or here, or in the middle. By using the rule of thirds, you end up with a more symmetrical looking design rather than what we had by drawing focus lines for the golden rectangle. Let me find a piece of white paper here. This, of course, would be an asymmetrical design, which is what we discussed earlier, where we were drawing diagonal lines through the square and the rectangles. Our weight is over here on the side. So we have asymmetrical and symmetrical. Equal weight on both sides. And here's one more example. We can even do the golden rectangle and do the rule of thirds for the golden rectangle as well. And end up, so we can do either an asymmetrical design or a symmetrical design, depending on what rule we follow. And then one more I want to go through. And I have you draw a 5-inch by 7-inch rectangle. And every rectangle can be divided into a square. Ignore this line here. We have a square and a rectangle. Or, ignore this line here, we have a square and a rectangle. So no matter what size or type of rectangle we make, we can do a square or a rectangle. The line that we draw to divide it into a square and a rectangle, this is called the rebatement line. And you can put a focal point anywhere along this rebatement line. I would put it more towards the center rather than over here on the edge, because we talked about having focal points too close to the edge. It just kind of forces the viewer to look at the next picture. So I would put it somewhere along here in the center, but it's a great place. You know, you can't go wrong putting a focal point on the rebatement line. If you happen to be making a book, the rebatement line, any place above it, is the ideal spot for your title. And since I have I have 5 books out right now, I usually keep mine closer to the top, because once Lisa puts them into the book racks, all you can see is the top. So if you put your title down towards the bottom, you know, it depends on how intense people are looking for your book. So I would put it up towards the top, but no lower than the rebatement line, because then it starts looking funky. And one other thing with the rebatement lines If you want to turn it into a triptych, which is a set of 3 pieces, this would be an ideal shape to use. We have 1 in the center and then 2 off to the side. And that would give you a guideline on what size to make. So there are many, many other types of rectangles. Many, many other types of rectangles that I could go into, but I don't want to confuse you at this point. But one thing I did want to kind of cover this, and so you would know where to put focal points and all, is we'll probably work with do some tile work next fall, and so that way you've got some guidance as to where to put your focal points in a rectangular design. So, do we have any questions? And I'm done with record time. And I do want to give a shout out to, I think it was Melissa and Robin. They both turned in homework this past week, so good for you ladies. And one of you actually turned in your insect study and tatted up a piece, so it turned out really cute. Yeah, I think it was Robin Bowser you did homework this week. Great. Well, that's all I have for today. A quick blip on motion and a lesson on rectangles. So. Melissa Jordan asks, when I design tatting, do I make photocopies of the shape and then fill in with squiggles for chains and rings? You can. I think that's how Mike Lyons might have done a lot of his tile designs. Would be, he tends to tat them up. But I think he probably does when he's first designing is to do the photocopies, and that way you can arrange them a little bit and decide which way you like the look the best. So. Any other questions? Okay, Susan Fuller will sketch her outlines and then begin filling them in. That's a good idea, with rings and chains, yes. Oh, yeah. Melissa left her, instead of gluing her circles down when we did the balance homework, she leaves it on the table, and then anybody can kind of make a design however they want with the circles and the lines. So then she takes a picture of it. I love that idea. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, I can let you all merrily go on your way. My client says for him, the basic outline tells him what elements are necessary to construct it in tatting. Either SCMRs, floating rings, whatever. So, thank you, Mike. Well, I can let you go on your ways to do your homeworks and get those mailed in quickly. Remember, Tammy's going to be drawing the winning homework submitter on Monday when she teaches class. So, thank you, Robin. Thank you, Sin. Thank you, Maria. We will see you next week. We'll be talking about, it's the last principle in art, and then we'll talk about the unified design. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I designed the whirlpool and what kind of problems I had with it. So we will look to see you all later. Happy tatting.